So this game is actually a sequel to the original Ace Angler game that was released on the Nintendo Switch in Japan in 2019. I knew of it back then, as I do keep up to date on import games, but I never got around to picking it up. I could have probably downloaded it on my Japanese Nintendo Switch account, but I wanted to play it with the proper fishing rod peripheral, which is part of the experience. The game itself features a lot of arcade fishing action, and beyond that, it's sort of like Pokemon meets Monster Hunter in a lot of ways. It sounds ridiculous, and it kind of is, but you'll see what I mean during the review. Now personally, I do like the game. I think it's pretty fun, but unfortunately, I can't help but be a little bit disappointed by it. I knew a decent amount about the game before I bought it, but I don't know, it's just not quite what I was expecting it to be. I just don't like it as much as I thought I would, and that kind of sucks because I've wanted to play one of these games for years now. I enjoyed collecting the fish and discovering the monster variants, but from what I understand, a lot of the mechanics are based mostly on luck. So you could potentially do everything right, waste your resources, and still fail. It actually became pretty annoying relatively fast, maybe within the first hour or so, which isn't a great feeling. I think Ace Angler can be fun. I mean, it's very popular in Japanese arcades, so perhaps it's just a me thing. Either way, let's get into the review and I'll try to explain. So what is Ace Angler Fishing Spirits? Well, it's an arcade fishing game that's based on a real-life Japanese arcade machine of the same name from 2012. The arcade machines are well loved, they've had many iterations over the years, and the game we're talking about today marks the second release for the Nintendo Switch console. Now, normally I'd go over availability and things like that at the end of this section, but before we get too far into the review, I think it's important to give you one vital bit of information up front. So basically, this game's had a very strange release in terms of how and where you can actually get it. Firstly, Japan has its own physical copy and a physical copy that's bundled with a plastic fishing rod peripheral. Both of these versions, as far as I understand them, contain Japanese text and speech only. So that's the first way you can get it, but it's not ideal for most Western players. The second way is classified as the Asia English version, which is exactly the same as the Japanese version, but contains English text and subtitles. I myself imported this version with the fishing rod from PlayAsia, and obviously that's what you're seeing here. Lastly, you can pick up a digital-only version from the eShop, but there's a few things to note. There's no official release of the fishing rod accessory, and I'm not sure if there's any third-party options available at the time of this review. Arguably, the biggest problem is that the digital version is only available in the USA, Canada, Mexico, and a few other places outside of the EU. So what does that mean? Well, if you live in the EU or the UK, there simply isn't a way to buy the game normally, whether that be physically or digitally. I believe you could perhaps create an American account or something like that and access it that way, but I'm not 100% sure. Personally, I find this to be ridiculous. I usually save my opinions for later in the video, but I felt like this should be addressed up front. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the game itself. As you can see, it features an almost Animal Crossing-like style to the characters and the hub world. This hub area is structured a bit like a theme park, complete with attractions for you to take part in and prizes to win. Each of the buildings that you see in this hub house separate in-game activities. There's 6 in total to engage with, so let's go over them briefly one by one. From left to right, you've got Shark Fever, Legend of the Poison Seas, Ace Angler Plus, the Ace Angler Aquarium, the Online Angler Competition, and the Ace Angler Party. Shark Fever is a mini-game based on those real-life coin-pushing games that have been common in arcades for as long as I can remember. You simply throw your gold medals into it and hope that you'll push out more gold medals than you originally invested. As you play, you'll be aiming to push these shark orbs over the edge to fill a meter on the left, which, when full, activates an encounter that gives you a chance at a rare catch. Legend of the Poison Seas is this game's single-player story mode. It's got a basic narrative that follows the blight of a polluted sea, and you take on the role of what is essentially the chosen savior of that sea. This mode has you playing through a ton of different stages, each with a variety of objectives to complete, and once you've completed the objectives, you'll be able to progress to the next stage. Ace Angler Plus is this game's bread and butter mode. It's basically the main or standard Ace Angler experience, and it's very similar to what you'd find on the actual arcade machines. This mode is where you'll earn most of your gold medals, which, as you've probably figured out at this point, are used as a currency for literally everything in the game. Each cast of your line in this mode costs medals, and then catching the fish gives you medals back. The idea is to pace yourself and catch a wide range of targets. Some fish are worth a lot more gold medals than others, and it pays to pick your catches wisely. The more you play, the more thunderbolts you'll earn, and you can use these to stun the fish on your line, thus making them easier to catch. You're also able to acquire items and tools that can be used before casting and while a fish is hooked, which makes some catches easier as well. You may notice a few different backgrounds during fishing. These are like different stages or tiny biomes containing different types of fish. This mode cycles through these areas infinitely, allowing you to catch a variety of fish in a variety of places and giving you more chances at catching the rarer creatures. The Ace Angler Aquarium is a location that you'll become familiar with very quickly. One of your goals in the game is to build up a collection of fish, and the main way to do that is by using the in-game gacha mechanics, which are housed in this building. Don't worry though, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to pay real money for the gacha system. It just uses the gold medals that you earn elsewhere, as well as a few special tickets. You'll be able to look over your collection, learn about the different species, and walk around the aquarium in real time to admire the wide array of fish that you've caught. The online angler competition doesn't really need much of an explanation, but it's basically just an online mode where you can play with or against other players. The game does actually feature couch co-op as well, which leads us neatly into the last attraction, which is the Ace Angler Party. The Ace Angler Party is a collection of challenges and mini-games that can be played solo or with up to 3 friends. You've got a battle mode where you compete to catch the most fish, tons of mini-games, a tour mode that combines mini-games and competitions together, and a master challenge mode that serves as a single-player mode, pitting you against CPU opponents at difficulty levels of your choice. And lastly, before we get into my personal opinions on the game, I'll quickly go over the actual fishing mechanics and how it all works. If you're using a standard controller setup like the Joy-Cons or a Switch Pro controller, you simply use the left stick to aim your line and press a button to cast. You then tap the button to reel in the fish once you have a bite. Using the fishing rod attachment works in virtually the same way, believe it or not. You just need to insert one Joy-Con of your choice into the rod and then attach the reel to it so that it covers a specific button. At that point, you can adjust the aim with the analog stick, and all the reel does is press the button that you've covered over and over again as you spin it. So it's really no different to simply mashing the button with your finger, but it certainly does feel more like fishing, and I suppose that's the point. It's best to think of catching each of the individual fish as sort of like throwing a Pokeball at a Pokemon. When the fish is hooked, it has a hidden value that determines whether or not you'll actually be able to catch it. This number can be adjusted by using different tools, different rods, and of course the Thunderbolts that you accumulate through play. This is, again, similar to using berries in Pokemon Go or an Ultra Ball in virtually any Pokemon game. There's no line tension, the fish don't have HP or anything like that, and you'll basically never know if the fish will break the line and escape until it happens. If you hook the same fish 10 times in a row, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to catch all 10, even if you use every tool at your disposal. The game simply isn't designed to be a fishing simulator. It's an arcade game at its core, and therefore, a lot of its systems are based on luck and repetition. As I said at the start, it's available right now and it's exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. However, if you're in the UK or the EU, keep in mind that you might struggle to get your hands on it. So what did I think of the game overall, considering that I've wanted to play it for quite a while now? Well, to be completely honest, I was pretty disappointed with it at first. I did a bit of research before I bought the game, as I always do, but it felt incredibly aggravating to play after only a short while. I think it was mainly down to the luck-based mechanics, which I will admit did become less annoying as time went on. But to sum things up, I'm going to have to throw myself under the bus. I think it's my fault entirely, and I believe that I basically disappointed myself. Like I almost set myself up for failure. I knew that it was based on an arcade machine. I knew that it wasn't going to be a simulator, but for some reason, I still thought it would play like some kind of skill-based fishing game. Looking back, I have no idea why I clung to that idea. When I was reading about the game, it was referred to multiple times as a mixture of 3 different styles or elements, and those were Pokemon, Monster Hunter, and of course fishing. After sticking with the game, I do have much more of an appreciation for it than I did at the start, and that's because I learned to think of it like Pokemon. Every time I hooked a fish, I just equated it to having thrown a Pokeball at it, and in my head, that helped me to get past the issue and enjoy the game. I mean, I buy games because I want to enjoy them, right? I don't buy them because I want to hate them and then post a negative review. But yeah, I ran into an issue where I was becoming annoyed with the game in the first few hours, so I tried to change my outlook, I tried to change my attitude, and I tried to find a way to actually enjoy it. Now, one might argue that I shouldn't really have to do that in order to have fun, but we're all different and I strongly believe in giving things a fair chance. I wouldn't say that I love the game now, but I definitely understand what it's about, and in the end, I did have some fun with it. And really, that's the only negative thing I have to say about it. I found the luck-based stuff to be annoying at first, and the fact that they didn't bother to release it even digitally in the UK or EU is very odd. Outside of that though, it's an incredibly accurate arcade fishing game, and although I didn't get to test it myself, I imagine it would be great for couch co-op. Visually, I found the whole thing to be quite wholesome and charming. The character creation stuff is kind of basic, but it's fine for what it is, and the fish themselves are modeled well and they're animated nicely. The monster class creatures are a bit of a highlight because you never quite know what you're going to see or encounter, and after I got to grips with the game's systems, they did start to feel a little bit like legendary Pokemon to me. You really do just have to accept that you're not going to catch everything when you attempt to. Some of the legendary fish are just very difficult to obtain and have exceedingly low catch rates. It's just the nature of the game, but when you do find yourself in one of those encounters, it feels like an important event, and then, when you finally manage to land that super rare catch, it genuinely feels great. It's not quite on the level of taking down the Nameless King in Dark Souls 3, for example, but relatively speaking, it's still a nice achievement. Walking around the virtual aquarium to admire your collection is a nice little distraction, and being able to zoom in on them for a better look is a nice addition. I'm not someone who owns a real-life aquarium or any actual fish, but I'd imagine that people who do would get some real enjoyment from this aspect of the game. It's quite peaceful and relaxing to take a tour through the building and just look at them swimming around in the tanks. When you look at some of the biggest fish in the game up close, the frame rate does take a little bit of a hit, but that seems to be the only performance dip in the entire game, so it's not too bad. The gacha side of the game is quite Moorish, and that's probably because it speaks to my lifelong obsession with trading card games and collectible items in general. I enjoyed the simple process of earning the medals in the various game modes and then spending them at the gacha machine. I suppose it's that feeling of building up your collection and getting a small sense of progress and accomplishment each time. It's nice to see that the game doesn't include any way for you to pay real money for this system, and that's something that I do appreciate. It would have been real easy for them to include a whole host of microtransactions, but they didn't, so credit where credit is due on that one. In my opinion, Ace Angler Fishing Spirits is a game that annoys the crap out of me, but for some reason, I kept going back for more. I have to assume that's because it's an arcade game first and foremost, which, are usually built to be a bit unfair and to take your money, at least on some level. The game isn't unwinnable or impossible, it's just mildly frustrating sometimes, and again, if that's by design, then I understand why it is. Ultimately, I still think it looks nice and it does a good job of bringing the arcade game into players' homes. The fish and the other sea life are all presented pretty well, and the collectathon nature of the game did keep me engaged. I think the fact that we don't have the fishing rod accessory or a physical copy of the game in the West will hurt the game's sales, and not having it at all in the UK or the EU is an absolute mystery to me. A lot of the games that I choose to play and review are quite niche, and Ace Angler is no exception. I don't expect many people to know of its existence or even care about it. However, if you're looking for a couch co-op experience for your game nights or something to play with your kids maybe, I reckon this would be worth looking into. Personally, I was looking forward to playing this game for years, and don't get me wrong, I don't dislike it, but at the end of the day, a very small part of me thinks that maybe I should have just skipped it. If you enjoyed this particular video, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more. Don't worry, subscribing is completely free, but it really helps to grow the channel. If you'd like to help support what I do, then please check out the first link in the video description down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.